Hi, I'm Caitlin Chismore, and I'm thrilled to be speaking with Asia Suler today. Asia Suler is a mother, teacher, earth intuitive, and author of Mirrors in the Earth, Reflections on Self-Healing from the Living World. Asia began her journey after years of chronic pain and illness. The experience, which pushed her into a deep search for healing, both within and without, led her to the altar of the green world and the creation of an online hub that offers handcrafted medicines and educational experiences in herbalism, animism, and earth-centered personal growth. Asia has guided over 20,000 students in over 70 countries through her immersive online programs. Through her work, including her writings of motherhood, Asia helps people embrace their own unique medicine through a joyful engagement with the natural world. Welcome, Asia. Thank you for meeting with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Ah, pleasure. So my first question, can you please tell us about your relationship with plants and nature and how this inspires your current work?
Hmm. Yeah. For me, my relationship with the living world was and continues to be my saving grace. It's like the thing that keeps me anchored in myself, in my life, keeps me hopeful. Yeah, keeps me seeing sort of the the texture, of like why I'm here and why I'm like continuing to choose to be here. And my sort of origin story is that when I was in my late teens, I was diagnosed with a chronic pain condition called vulvodynia and was told that there was no recourse for healing. And that diagnosis pushed me um, into the living world. I often say that the world inside my body was so uncomfortable and so painful that I went outside. And it was really through connecting with the trees and the creeks and the denizens of nature that I started to feel hopeful, that I started to hear messages of hope and healing, and really just through witnessing the natural world heal itself over and over and over again, like every time winter came, spring was always on its heels. Like it really showed me that there's so much more potential and possibility in this world than what I had been handed. And so that connection was what really opened up this next phase of my life, which included healing from this pain condition and deciding that through healing, deciding that I really wanted to um, dedicate myself to learning more about alternative ways of healing because I, in part, felt so failed by the Western medical model and the natural world. And so I ended up going to school at the Chestnut School of Herbal Medicine for herbal medicine and, graduated, started practicing, seeing clients. I had a pretty like traditional, straightforward product line through my business, One Willow Apothecaries. But the sort of the through line, as I sort of went through these different iterations of teaching and learning and continuing to connect with the natural world, this through line was always that the natural world was the place where I found balance. It was the place where I found healing. It was the place where I found guidance. And so, over time, my teachings and my offerings evolved, and I really realized that what I'm here to do is to help other people make that connection as well, like their own completely unique, sacred connection with the living world because this planet and the green beings and all those that live here, they have so much to show us about our own potential, about our own life path, and about the potential of healing that's here. And so, yeah, my path has evolved really through recognizing that and through like really dedicating myself to that connection and helping others to make that connection. And it has really only continued since becoming a mom.
Wow. That is really beautiful and inspiring. And I feel that I relate on many levels to actually the chronic pain and and coming to the natural world for healing and then finding kind of guidance in that. And I love that you've brought that around to help others and that you have that in your motherhood journey as well, which we'll talk about today as well. Um, so you're also the author of Mirrors in the Earth that I have here. Just one of my favorite books of all time. And you can tell by like I just make a million
I
little
love that.
papers in it and I actually wrote in it, which I never do in books, like underline things and stuff like that. But um, so can you please share your interpretation of what the book is about and um, what you hope readers would take away from it?
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, at its heart, the book is really about this concept that self-compassion is a force of ecological healing, and that this journey of learning to see oneself, accept oneself, and have compassion for oneself is how we access the gifts that we're meant to bring to the planet at this time. I think there's a big conception, especially in circles where there is a lot of nature connection or where there is a lot of thinking about the bigger themes of life. There's this misconception that there's something innately wrong with humans, that like we don't deserve to be here, that we were a mistake. Because I think those of us who care, like there's a real grief, there's a real hurt, around like what we see going on in the world at large and on this planet. And the message that I heard and hear over and over and over again from the earth is the exact opposite. And that is that we're meant to be here at this time. Like we are part of nature. We were designed by this planet. We were created for a reason. And one of the biggest things that gets in the way of each one of us expressing like our natural ecological genius, like the gifts that we're here to bring to the collective whole in this time of great healing, is our inability to have compassion for our own selves, is the ways in which we get mired in self-doubt and self-judgment. And for me, I really wrote the book thinking about other sensitive people. I identify as a highly sensitive person, which is a term that was coined by Dr. Elaine Aron, and it talks about it refers to a section of the population, which is anywhere around 20% of the population, that has an innately more sensitive nervous system, more sensitive to sensory stimuli, has tends to have very vivid emotions, vivid experiences of life. And those of us who are sensitive, we probably knew this from early on, that we were experiencing things a little bit differently. And for some of us, this might have also been like a big source of shame. Like, I'm too sensitive, like I'm too shy, I'm too fragile, I'm too emotional. And so, because I identify in this way, and connecting with the living world has helped me so much to embrace my sensitivity, I really thought about other sensitives when I was writing this book, and really wanting other sensitives to embrace the superpower that is that sensitivity, because really we are all created with our unique bodies, our unique brains, our unique nervous systems, for a reason. And I think in particular with sensitives, there can be a real default pattern to self-judgment, to self-negation, to thinking it's selfish in any way to focus on ourselves. And that was like a big hurdle for me in life, and also in my healing journey, both with chronic pain and different cycles of chronic illness as well. And really the thing that the earth continued to show me is that my own individual journey of learning how to accept myself, see myself, accept myself, and ultimately have compassion for who I am, like that was actually the most important thing I could do at that time. And it has proven to be true that through embracing that, I then have been able to come out the other side of these different cycles that I've been in, and come out the other side stronger, clearer, more innovative, more able to actually be present with other people and with this world. And so this journey of embracing and being willing to work on self-compassion is a force of ecological healing for this planet.
Yes. Yeah. So you mentioned the idea of separateness and this kind of shame that we feel around the climate change, things like that. And this feeling of self-compassion and acceptance of yourself. And you found that through the living world. And as a highly sensitive person, which I also resonate with on a deep level, um, that nature can be a really beautiful ally for that. And just like, yeah, that self-acceptance and compassion and like seeing that mirror in nature and learning from nature. So beautiful. Um, so I did in your book notice lots of themes that reminded me of my motherhood journey. And yeah, so one reason why I brought you here is to talk about your experience as a mother. So some of the themes I noticed in the book that reminded me of that would be trust, self-knowing, resilience, change, the timelines and seasons. I had never heard of this term marcescence before I read this book, but I was like, whoa, matrescence, like they're very similar. This like mirroring and belonging, invisibility that just goes on. And I was wondering, now that you're a mother yourself, is there anything in the book that stands out to you on the nature of motherhood, or any insights that you learned that you'd like to share from nature or just your experience?
Hmm. Yeah, so much. I mean, I'm like really grateful that I wrote the book when I did. The book, I was finished with the book right as I was entering my last trimester of my pregnancy. And then the book came out in the world when my daughter was 5 months old. And so it's very like, even though I wrote the bulk of the book before she was here, um, or even like an idea really, uh, it feels now so wrapped up in my motherhood journey, like it was such a part of my pregnancy and then my postpartum. And so, yeah, it interestingly like really feels connected for me. And so many of the themes in the book now, it's like I reread my own chapter and I'm like, oh yeah, thank you. Like I need to remember this. And one thing that has been really helpful for me to think back on in the book, and especially these past 2 years since becoming a mother, is there is a chapter called Drop Dosages, and it's about the idea of the power of the small. And it talks in part about flower essences, which is a medicine that I love and really resonates with me, and talks about like why flower essences work the way they do as very, very subtle medicines, that they're like small enough to like, go into these like tiny little places inside of us, these places that like we've kept under lock and key and nothing will get through unless it's small enough to go through the keyhole. And, I compare it to like other ways in which in nature, small is not lesser than, like the subtle, the small, is can really be this catalyst for profound healing. And that is a lesson that I've come back to again and again and again in motherhood, because it's almost like as we see our children leap, this has been my experience. I see my child like make these huge leaps, right? And while she's leaping, I'm like holding one end of the jump rope, and like her dad's holding the other end. And like there's an aspect in which like your life slows, and like the bigness of what you can do is put a little bit on pause. At least this has been true for me. And some days it really feels like I'm just making like a gesture. You know what I mean? Like it's like I used to be able to like do the whole thing, whatever it was from start to finish. I'd have like a whole several hours to whatever it was, like, read and meditate and go for a walk and, like really have time to ponder something. And And now it's more like I make a gesture. It's like I have 10 minutes to gesture towards that thing. I have like 5 minutes to do something to just connect in with myself or connect into a question that I have. And it's such an important reminder for me that like small is not lesser than that, like just because we have less time now or less energy doesn't mean that what we can like experience or realize or even create will be um, like less vivid or less important than what we did before. And I even noticed like before having a child, it would take me a while in meditation to really drop in. And after having a child, like there's some days where my brain's all over the place, but there's like a sharpening that happens, even for as mushy as my brain is with lack of sleep. There's this sharpening around time where you're like, I only have X amount of time. So I'm going to make it happen. And I just think it's been such an important and like healing reminder for me. It's like that coupled with, in the book, I do have parts where I talk about just like the naturalness of having seasons in one's life, and that these seasons are what like make up like the beautiful symphony that we think of as like this experience on this planet, right? Like a garden wouldn't be as beautiful if everything bloomed at once. It's like everything needs to bloom at different times. And that specifically is the chapter where I talk about marcescence, this term you brought up, which is a term for deciduous trees that hold onto their leaves throughout winter. And we don't really know why they do it, but I've always felt like from a poetic like experience or perspective, like I can understand it. It's like there's always those parts within us, right? That it's like we think we should be past this, or we think we should have like, evolved this or fixed this or let go of it. But like there's a reason why we're holding on to it. Like there's an ecological reason why these deciduous trees practice marcescence, why they're holding onto their leaves throughout the winter. And every time spring hits, I've just witnessed it here because it's spring where I am, that, like the beech trees that have been holding their leaves, it's like one day I'll walk up and they're all gone because all the buds now are swelling and the new leaves are coming. And so that too has been a really important reminder for me in motherhood, where sometimes it feels like these phases just stretch on and on, especially the hard phases, or the phases where you feel like you're really distanced from yourself, or you're like, why is X, Y, or Z continuing to be so hard for me? That's just this reminder that like that the seasons are important, and what you're holding on to is important. What you're still working through is important. That like it's okay to be in winter, and in like a wintering time of one's life, because like when it's time, spring always comes. And there is like an inner wisdom to nature, including the nature of your own body and psyche, to where you're at and why you're lingering there.
Yes. Yes. I just keep laughing because it's just like so true. Um, I love the small dosages and related to motherhood, how you also deeply appreciate those minute little moments, one little thing like a cup of tea or a shower is just like
Yes.
the best feeling in the world. And yeah, the seasons that feels like, oh my gosh, like when it is ever going to end or change, and like then the letting go and the kind of surrendering to the constant change of it. Yeah, so beautiful. I was wondering if you have any way that nature has supported you personally as a mother, like any practices with nature, anything like that that you turn to,
Mhm.
or anything that you bring your daughter involved in nature, anything like that. Hmm.
Yeah, I do feel like being with the living world is such a lifeline for me and continues to be, especially on the motherhood journey. Uh, This one thing in particular has been really helpful, as mothers in particular. I mean, parents in general, but mothers in particular, we carry so much responsibility. Like the weight of what we carry, like, especially I think this day and age where it's like so many of us are trying to like change patterns, change intergenerational family patterns, trauma patterns, patterns of dysfunction. It's really hard work. It's like the sort of the physical, mental, spiritual, emotional load we put on ourselves to not only like put dinner on the table and like be loving, but to like show up for our children in this way where like their psyches, their self-confidence, their understanding of their boundaries, like that, all of these things like that maybe we didn't have, that there's this possibility that they might grow up and have that intact, right? And so it's an amazing opportunity, and like the psychological burden of that can be a lot because as we are also moving through these phases with our children, it starts to like bring up the parts inside of us, that are still infants, that are 2 years old, that are, that are struggling, that weren't supported, held, attuned to, affirmed in the way that we needed to be, mirrored in the way that we needed to be. And so it's like this big journey happening all the time at the same time that you're trying to do the best job you can. And so for me, like one of the most important practices has actually been like going out into nature. My preference is like a big tree, but depending on where you are in the world, this might be like the ocean or a big rock, but like to find basically to find like a mother in nature and like lay down with them and just like let yourself be held for a little bit. Like
Mm.
take some time for yourself and go let yourself be held. Like let yourself not have it together for a second. Let yourself cry or let yourself complain over just like speaking aloud what's in your heart. Yeah, what feels hard. Like letting some of those burdens down, because I think that's one of the big things that like we, especially in the Western world and cultures that have really been divorced from our connection with nature as family, we don't realize that like the living world is here in part to hold us. That's a place where we can be held. That like we all grow up hearing this term Mother Earth, like it becomes trite because we hear it so much. But like if I remember after my daughter was born, like even when she was still in utero, being like, oh my God, like I get it now, like literally like I am this planet's child. Like and the depths of how much I love my own child and like what I would do for her and how much I would like I forgive of her. Like I would forgive her anything, like anything. And like to the extent of my ability, show up to hold her and just to realize like, wow, like that's the way the earth loves us. Like that's the opportunity here in terms of us being able to be held. And so I think that it, to me, it's been a really nourishing practice to kind of bring my like my own child parts out into nature and give myself that time to be like, I'm letting go of responsibility. I'm just going to express whatever is on my heart, and I'm just going to like ask to be held and then just be in that experience.
Mhm. Wow. Um, I'm just like in tears almost. That's so beautiful. Um, yeah, definitely motherhood does just bring up all of your unresolved wounds. And I totally agree with the reparenting and everything, and just the mental load and the conscious awareness of wanting to do things differently and not wanting to pass on your unresolved wounds to your children. But I really love that practice, and I'm actually going to do that regularly because I just love that idea
Mhm.
of being held by the earth. And yeah, this reframing of Mother Earth shifted for me as well as when I became a mother. Um, just like so much appreciation, and yeah, just how we were all born, they were all children of the earth, and how we're all interconnected, regardless of distance and everything. But it just reaffirmed that for me, I guess.
Mhm.
So thank you for sharing that. I was wondering if you like can speak about your mothering depth writing. You've started to write about motherhood yourself. So there's so many passages that resonate with me. You can sign up and you get them in your inbox, but you also have them on your website. So particularly the ones on the eclipse and losing the North Star were ones that resonate with me. But would you like to share about it yourself?
Sure. Yeah, so I writing has always been like a lifeline for me um in my life, but after my daughter was born, like it felt like it was like a life raft. It was like I need this so much. And like, even yeah, like I remember I think even like the first night I was home from the hospital, I just started writing and I didn't have much time, maybe 5, 10 minutes like before I would pass out, once we finally got her to sleep. And but it was so important to me that writing, it was like that red thread that just kept me connected to myself, which is so important, like to not feel like you're just all of a sudden completely dissolved. And so it was probably like it was a little over a year that I just was writing for myself, short little bits just to kind of keep my sanity intact. And then I decided to start a Substack and start sharing writings around motherhood. And I called it Mothering Depth um, because I loved the idea that like depth itself could be like a place of mothering. And I think that's one of the things about the motherhood journey. There's a lot more honest conversations happening now than, even I think 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But like the thing about motherhood, it is so much more than a lot of sort of like the packaged versions that we see on whatever it is, like sitcoms, movies. Um, it's it is so deep. It's like you go all the way to the bottom of the well, or you go all the way to the bottom of the ocean. So it's like all the things. Motherhood is like all the things. It's like love and joy, but also like terror and sorrow, and like profound belonging and like profound alienation and disconnection. And like, so I really wanted to like write about that, like just all the things and the depths themselves, and just the idea of like the depths of all the things, and embracing all the things, that could be like a mothering force, like depth to the depths themselves, mothering you and mothering this new phase in your life. So that was why I named um, the Substack what I named it. And yeah, it's been a really healing, an interesting experience to write every week there. Um, I have through my through my business, right? Like I've been in business now for like 12 years. And so like there's a lot of like comfort and like, built-in routines, and like, it is like in some ways like this like comfy robe I can like slip back on, And I think writing about motherhood, it's been this new frontier for me, because it's also new. But even like the format is new, and like what I'm sharing is more raw um, than what I might share in other places, because I'm so in process. Like I'm so in the midst in terms of motherhood. And so that like the vulnerability of that has been just like a fascinating experience, and also such a bonding experience, because I feel like so many other mothers and parents have shown up in that space and just are like ditto, like me too, like whatever it is I'm sharing, and yeah, and just to be like the way I kind of process things often is like I sort of will go deeply through them, often through metaphor, and through writing. Normally I kind of come out to another side where there's like some sort of like vista again, like where I can see a wider perspective of like what I've been moving through. And so that's like really why I wanted to do this writing, is like because the writing itself actually helps me move through. So like the two posts you mentioned, the eclipse of parenting and losing the North Star. Um, the eclipse of parenting was about actually my first trip away from my daughter, where I went to travel to go see the total solar eclipse this past April. um, in Texas, and just real like how wonderful it was. Like it's such a good time, like just taking a break, and like reconnecting to this part of myself that loves travel and loves alone time and all the things. And then realizing like, whoa, like parenting is this like eclipse, where it's like while it's happening, you're like, I could imagine if you didn't know that the sun was going to return, you'd be like, this is actually like really scary. Like this is a lot. Like the whole light has changed, like all the creatures are acting differently. Like my whole life feels different. Like what is happening? But then it's like just watching the sun return after this like magnificent moment, it's like awe-inspiring and scary and like all the things at once. And then the sun returns and you're like, right, like life returns, and it was just such a reminder to me. It's like the things that bring you alive always come back. And like even when you're in these eclipse moments in parenting, like there is another side, like the light will return. The things that you most need will return. This is how life works. It's like the things that you need are magnetized to you, like they will return because your life force is supported and needed and desired on this planet. And um but it felt good to like right through that, and then yeah, the losing your North Star was about like a realization I actually had when I was in therapy, where I realized I was like, oh right, I feel so dislocated in my life since becoming a mom, because like I actually feel in a way like I've lost my North Star. Like I used to always have like the new project, the new thing on the horizon that was like okay, no matter what was going super wonky, or whether I was like, in another round of pain or illness, it's like this was the thing to move towards. And I think since becoming a mom, like I'm often too tired really to even be like, oh, okay, like big new project, let's move towards it. It's like at the end of the day, I'm just like ready to go to bed. So it's like, again, these like more small doable things. But when I sat with it, I actually was sitting down by the creek at my house. And I actually like was sort of in ceremony with the land here. I was just giving my gratitude, and I like asked, in a hard moment, just having a hard parenting day, like just asked, while I had a babysitter for an hour, asked the creek, the land, to just like show me something that would be helpful, and yeah, I was shown this visual of like you've lost the North Star, but if you just like tip back, what you're being given instead is the cosmos. And it just reminded me of this trip I had taken to the Canadian backcountry when I was younger, where there were more stars than I'd ever seen in my entire life. It's like the entire celestial heaven was like a completely different place than I'd ever experienced, because it was just like so magnificent and so much, and I had no idea where any constellations was, what was going on at all, but it was okay. I like completely just let it go and experienced it. And I realized in that moment down by the creek, I was like, oh, like this is the phase of parenthood I'm in right now. Like there's no North Star. That's okay. Like there's no next big project. There's like, I don't know when I'm going to be able to do X, Y, or Z again, write the next book, go on this trip. Like, but I can, in moments when I remember, like tip back and just be like, whoa, like I'm seeing existence come into form. Like I'm seeing like literal, like the spark that is a soul, like come into a body and like grow and become and learn. And like I'm being exposed to like every facet of existence, every spectrum of emotions. And like that's awe-inspiring, if I can let it be in those moments when I have that ability to let it be. So yeah, thank you for asking about mothering depth. And it's really been like very nourishing to connect with other people there who are also in the midst, tipped back, looking at the cosmos.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing all that, because I know that is so nourishing for other moms to read that and to just have that acknowledgement that someone feels the same way, you know? And and yeah, just having those moments with nature, it almost feels like you're part, you feel more part of nature too. Like that this slowing down is like forcing you into that this existence that nature is on its own time anyway. There's no like normal linear time in nature that not normal, but like the way that the time is constructed. Anyways, diversion. But yeah, so you mentioned asking nature um, to show you something that you need to learn, kind of thing. Um, do you have any other like tools that you would suggest to parents or mothers, individuals who want to deepen their relationship with nature? Like they maybe not have that deep connection already.
Mhm. Yeah, um, so much of making a connection with anyone or anything, right, is like really realizing the individuality and the personhood of a person, of a being. And so for me, like it all starts in that one-on-one relationship. So I often tell people, like, if you want to have a deeper connection with nature, like it can feel overwhelming. Like there's, what should I do? Like, what should I study? Like, which landscape should I go to? Like, do I need to like go to like a pristine, like wilderness space? Like, how does this work? And I always tell people just to like find one one place, one sit spot, um, and just start visiting that one place. Like it could be a stone in your backyard or like a tree in the park down the road, like just one place that feels like good when you're there. Um, that you can commit to visiting like at least once a week for like 15 minutes. And what you're doing is you're just creating relationship. And like at its heart, like all of reality is based on relationship. The way that all of the way that the living world functions is based on relationship. All healing happens in relationship. Like even if we're talking about taking a pharmaceutical, right? Like that's a relationship between you and that chemical compound. Like everything happens inside of relationship. And so, if you want to deepen your connection with nature, like just make one connection. And I often find that when we make that one connection, it kind of opens this gateway to the whole landscape and to this like whole other realm of being, as long as we're willing to really prioritize and make that one connection. And ask yourself, like, if you were connecting with another human, like what are the things that you would do, right? Like, because those things will translate. Like maybe you would talk to them, right? Like you'd introduce yourself, you'd ask them about yourself, and ask them about themselves. And like, so bringing that element, like introduce yourself, like sit and listen, see what comes to you. And this might feel silly at first, but I often say that silliness is actually a really important feeling to have, because as we know, right, we witness our children experience silliness. It's like um, they learn what's silly, and what's silly to them is anything that's like a cultural norm or rule that they can then turn on its head, right? Like super funny to put your shoe on your head, because that's not where shoes go, right? So they're like, this is so silly, this is so fun. And they crack up, right? Well, so when you go out and you sit with a tree, maybe, and you introduce yourself, you might feel silly, but that's because you're turning the cultural paradigm on its head, right? Like this is important work. We need to do this work, because the paradigm of separation and hierarchy that we've been handed clearly doesn't work. And so, yeah, like embrace the silliness if you feel silly about it. Like just like how your child embraces being silly and like relishes in it. You might also decide to bring a gift, maybe to this place, or to this tree, or to this stone, or to this river. Anything that's meaningful to you that is also biodegradable is a wonderful gift, like something like water, for example, or a bit of dried plant. Um, Something like tobacco is like a really traditional gift for a lot of peoples, especially here in Turtle Island, North America. And but it could be anything. It could be a song, it could be a poem that you wrote. Like it's all about the energy of bringing connection and bringing presence. And that is what opens up like this whole new realm of connection, just being willing to prioritize that one-on-one relationship.
Mm, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I love that. And the intention does kind of open a portal, and that revisiting like does deepen it, does change it. It's like a felt sense that is different. And I also like how you can see like the transition of the seasons and all of that as well. I actually remember as a child too, at different points in my life, I'd kept visiting different areas to get a lesson or get something. Um, but yeah, that was really beautiful. So it can be translated to not just like adults, we can also teach our children that too. So I love that. And also the idea of like animism, like the other those objects have life as well, right? Not just humans. Um,
Yeah. And I love too that you brought up like going to these places like and receiving lessons and like understanding more about yourself because the reason why I named my book Mirrors in the Earth was this idea that like the earth like wants to work like a reflective benevolent mirror for us, showing us to ourselves, and that in an ideal scenario, right, we all grow up as children having parents or caregivers who can be that kind of mirror for us. And unfortunately, um, that often experiences some sort of disruption or doesn't happen in the way that we really need it to happen. Um, and what's really empowering though is to like remember that the earth is the parent mirror that never forsakes us, that is still here, that still wants to mirror back to us these things that we so deeply need, and it's never too late.
yeah. Ah, this has been such an incredible conversation. I just feel like I'm gonna cry the whole time like I do in your book. So just thank you for all the work that you do. And I would love for you to read a passage I shared with you on page 151 and 152 of your book. That just reminded me of parenthood, and it talks about belonging and visibility, being seen by the earth, which is kind of what we're ending on there. And yeah, sometimes in parenthood, it can feel like consuming and foreign and kind of isolating at the beginning. So I just think this really speaks to all of that. And there's just a million passages in this book that are beneficial to parents and just anyone that is interested in humanity and the earth, really. But yes, when
Hmm.
you are ready, I would love to hear your passage.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Thank
Nature is our wider family, and it always recognizes us as kin. As blind as we've become to the natural world surrounding us, the denizens of this world never stopped seeing us. The trees around your home recognize you. The squirrels watch as you go past. The cardinals fly to get a closer look at the color of your shirt. And the deer in the woods know the moment you step foot on the path. We have felt alone for so long because we have been distanced from this wider family. But we need only step outside to recognize how deeply we are seen. No matter how dim I have felt myself to be, the wider world was simply waiting for me to realize my light again, to come join them in the natural radiance of everything. I saw that not once had the earth ever judged me. For all the heart aching walks I had taken in my PJs, or the days when I ate chips for dinner, not 1 inch of my quote failures were reflected back to me from the wider world. All the trees had seen, all the birds had sung, all the cows had communicated to me was that I was human, that I was colorful and moving and worthy of belonging. No matter how much I thought I was separate, to them, I was never something apart. I was a member of the family. I was a part of everything.
you. Thank you. Again, just so beautiful. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay, I'm settle on that for a second. Um, so yes, thank you again. Is there anything that you would like to share? I'll share the links in the description, but there's any upcoming programs or any other insights or comments you'd like to leave us with?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, first I'll just share that like if this aspect of um connecting to the living world and like really having these like super fluid avenues of connecting and of receiving guidance and of like feeling supported is something that's really calling to people. I have a program called Intuitive Plant Medicine where I've basically gathered like all the tools, all the avenues that have been like essential to me and my path of opening. And the course goes on sale once a year, and it's about to go on sale for a couple weeks this May. So, depending on when folks listen to this, that is coming up. And you can find out more about that if you go over to my website. We'll have a banner up about that. Or if you want to sign up for the newsletter, we'll obviously let you know about it there. On my website, there's also something that people have reflected me that's been really helpful for them is a quiz that I have on the website called "What is your Earth Healing Archetype?" And there's 5 archetypes that I really have been able to like see and delineate through my years of working with people, that I see people embodying that are unique and specific and really help people understand like how their own like energy system works and like what the nature of the gifts are that they're meant to bring to this planet. So yes, people have reflected back to me that's super helpful. So that's there too as a resource if folks are interested. And yeah, I just want to like honestly from my heart, like just thank people who are here and listening because it's like it's so true that this work of mothering and parenting, like it is this force of ecological restoration that we're undertaking right now. And like all of the like joy and effort and like love and personal healing that you're bringing to this, like it matters. It's important. And even on the days where you feel like, am I even doing anything? Like, is this even, is this even gonna like turn out, like to just take a moment and like let yourself be held by the earth and remind yourself like you're doing so much. And it's actually like quite magnificent what you're doing right now to like raise these children who are absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt like choosing to come and be here and change the world. Like that to me is just so obvious and vivid and amazing that like we get to witness that, we get to be a part of that. And like you in everything that you're doing right now are completely enough, that like you are seen, that the earth like loves and cherishes you for doing this work, and that yeah, you deserve to have these moments where you can recognize that in yourself and then sort of just like let go and melt and know that it's all working out and that you are held as you do this because you are a mother, among all of the other mothers of nature, the mothers of existence, the mother that is this planet. And so you are in a community here that is holding you and relishing you and cherishing you just as you are.
Thank you. Thank you for being such a beautiful, inspiring human being and for just this gift of your time and sharing all your insights with all of us mothers who just cherish it. So, yes. And I'm really excited to see the generation of children who evolve on this planet and are the next like caretakers of the planet. And I really have faith in it, especially with like people like you that are doing the work that you're doing um, and including that in your motherhood journey. So thank you.
Mm. Thank you so much for having me. This has been such an honor and also such a delight. This is
Thank you.
a beautiful space you've created. So, yeah, thank you for inviting me into it.
Thank you very much.